Book 1, Amity's Road. Volume 1, The Rose Waltz. There once was a lonely woman who lived within the heart of the forest. In her yard, she had a beautiful, luscious garden. The woman would grow every plant that she could think of. Watermelon, strawberries, pumpkins, apples. If you could think of it, she was growing it within her garden. Well, almost anything. There was one plant that she longed to see sprout within her lawn. A rose. Late one evening, the woman was startled out of her thoughts by a knock on her door. This was unusual, the woman thought. No one ever came to visit her anymore, ever since she moved into the forest. Opening the door, she was greeted with the sight of a single red rose. With a gasp, the woman swooped up the flower, preening at its ripped petals and bent stem. How could something do this to such a beautiful flower? The woman spent weeks tending to the broken flower. She would provide water daily and guide it to sunlight every morning and evening. Slowly, the rose began to heal with the woman's nurturing. In no time, the rose found itself at full health, no longer needing the woman's assistance. But the flower stayed anyway. The rose found itself slipping into the woman's routine from before. Each morning, the woman and the rose would tend to the other plants in the garden. In the evening, the two would make a feast to eat for dinner. And at night, they would watch the sun chase the moon across the sky, telling stories of great heroes trapped within the stars. Even the woman's friends had grown fond of the flower. One of her friends gifted them an elegantly decorated pot for the rose to grow safely in. Another friend had read stories of creatures all over the world to the rose. While this sparked the want to explore past the forest and the garden, the rose could never see a life without the woman, whose kindness was limitless. It was an accident. The woman knew this, but it didn't stop the rose from feeling immense guilt. No matter how many times the woman reassured the flower that she was fine, the rose was inconsolable. They were out in the garden like usual. The woman was showing the rose how to properly pick strawberries without hurting the plant and the berry itself. Overly excited and eager to help, the rose had tried to pick a berry alongside her. But what they both had forgotten was that every rose has thorns. Those thorns are not meant to hurt, just defend. But with neither of them paying attention, the woman pricked her finger on the rose's stem, drawing a single drop of blood. The next morning there was a pounding on the woman's cabin door. She hurriedly looked out to see the townsfolk. As she took a step outside, she was met with loud shouting and angry faces. She insisted on knowing what was the matter, and why they had come all the way from the village to her cabin. The townsfolk yelled in rage about how they had heard about the rose that she was harboring within her garden. Confused, she asked them how they had known. All they would scream was how dangerous it must be, pointing out the small bandage wrapped around her pricked finger. The woman quickly explained how the rose didn't mean to hurt her, and it was simply a misunderstanding. But none of the pillagers would listen to the woman, insisting that they must kill the rose. Aghast, she rushed into her garden to warn the flower. She told the rose that to get as far away as possible from the cabin, and the rose listened intently. On that day, the woman stood bravely in front of the rioters and told them that they were wrong. They didn't listen to her, of course, and charged into destroying her garden and harming her, demanding that she handed over the flower. But the rose was long gone. Prologue. Alone. Ida was alone. It was a fact. Nothing can be argued about it. The sky is blue, the grass is green, and Ida was alone. She had been for many years. Growing up in the streets of Monarch with almost no help, she had begun to prefer it that way. Being abandoned as a baby for being too much work due to her disability, she decided that she didn't need friends. She had herself, and that was enough. So, watching the town's blacksmith, she made her own prosthetic leg and arm, solidifying that she truly does not need anyone to rely on. No imaginary friends that up and leave, no parents to watch out for her and scold her for silly mistakes. And she was fine with that. So by the time she was 14, she had developed a routine for herself. Wake up, feed the cats and birds that just won't leave her alone, open up shop for bounty hunters, then sleep. Although a bit boring to anyone else, Ida takes pride in her solo work, feeling like she finally is making a difference in someone else's life. Working for bounty hunters was hard work. Being a bounty hunter was even harder work, so Ida was fine staying on the sidelines and helping where she could. Opinions on bounty hunters were scattered to the public. Their main job is to hunt down mythical beings and use them to help humans by any means necessary. They're usually sent out on bounties, being paid in large amounts to hunt and kill creatures. Some people, very few, say that what they're doing is cruel and inhumane, making them the monsters for killing the creatures. Others say that the beings are meant to be killed and are a threat to humans. For Ida, it's a simple decision. It's them or her, and Ida chooses herself. On a late evening in the fall, Ida decides to brush up on her blacksmithing skills. Her joints for her leg and arm were getting rusty, so she didn't see the harm in getting in touch with an old hobby. So, opening her booth at the edge of town, she begins to work on her joints. By the time she had finished her elbow and wrist joint, her parrot starts squawking, alerting her that someone has arrived. Looking up from her cot on the ground, she notices a group of bounty hunters approaching. Hobbling to her feet, she gives her best welcoming smile, although it was more of a grimace. "You sell maps?" the leader asked. He was a tall man, light-skinned with his hair in a low ponytail. Ida would say that she was intimidated, but the way he smiled without a care in the world made him significantly less threatening. "Of course I do," Ida says. "For a price." She's been alive long enough now to know that you never do anything for free. The man rolls his eyes, slightly annoyed, and then drops 10 gold coins on the wooden booth. To say Ida was speechless was an understatement. Ever since the threat of the corruption, money's been tough to come by. The corruption, a mass, a being of anger and sorrow. There are no words to describe the destruction this thing has brought. All of humanity's misery and suffering, hatred and resentment into one entity. Ida was born into a hopeless world with an even more hopeless future. But there was nothing Ida could do about it, so she'll worry about the small things for now. Snatching the coins quickly and stuffing them in her pocket, she fixes her gaze on the squad of hunters. She nods at them, digging around in her chest, and grabs 2 maps. One map is of the town, and the other is of the surrounding forest. These 2 will get you the furthest in your hunt for... What, exactly? Ida asks. An Orchidean, slippery thing it is. Looks young, so its magic will still be strong. Orchideans, in short, are sentient trees and plants with exalted abilities. While they are viewed as a threat to humans with their strong powers, they also have a special organ, a part of their heart, which can heal humans. So naturally, they are hunted. "Well, I wish you the best of luck with your hunt. May you return with the heart of that foul beast." And with Ida's words, they set off into the morning. She lets her very fake smile drop, something settling in her gut. Ida was a very imaginative person. Another fact about her that couldn't be argued. She would create happy worlds filled with happy creatures, making a getaway in her mind to an overall better life. So it was no surprise that she made herself an imaginary friend when she was younger. She didn't mean to. One day she was alone and the next she wasn't. Plain and simple. She never named him. Never had the time to, considering it was so unexpected. But there was one small detail that made that interaction with hunters borderline miserable. Her friend was an Orchidean. Ida would keep that secret until the day she died, fantasizing about a cruel beast, a terrible creature as a childhood friend. It was completely preposterous. But she had also argued that she had no control over it. She didn't make this imaginary friend on purpose. It was like her mind had decided that she was done being alone. For the time being. 4 months was all it took for Ida to be alone again. One day, she was out in the forest, strayed far away from the path, talking with this Orchidean boy with a specific swirling in his bark skin that inspired the logo of her booth, smiling more so in that moment than her entire life, Tim disappearing. It was like her mind had just decided that it was enough make-believe. It was time to get back to the real world, real work. So she did just that. Days turned into weeks into months, until young Ida accepted that she wasn't getting that youthful friend back. She came to terms with the fact that she didn't get to play pretend anymore, and that she needed to let go of this imaginary friend. And if she wept at night, cursing her foolish and young mind for only giving her a taste of normal, only to leave her alone again, then that was nobody's business but her own.